Welcome and welcome to the Outsiders Podcast. I'm your host, Sean Sims. My co-host, Superstar Doc Cheatham, he's actually on assignment, but he will be with us next time around Thursday. But this is the Outsiders Podcast special edition, Monday special edition. The Outsiders Baltimore edition. We have to do a special edition because of the circumstances that are going on in Baltimore City. What has happened, what has transpired, which is of horrific, monumental proportions, and what I believe will turn out to be, once all is looked at, investigated, and all said and done, a situation of corruption. I believe. I don't see why there would be a crime scene, the Brooklyn Day massacre, mass shooting, 30 people shot, two brilliant, from what I saw, these two young people, their lives were taken away, they were murdered at the Brooklyn Day block party, and there's an investigation that will take place after a shooting. Not only do you have a shooting of 30 people, but you have two homicides, which have to be investigated. Each homicide has to be investigated, and each person who was shot. So you have to collect the information. You have to close that crime scene off to not be open up to anyone. So this special edition of The Outsiders, we're going to talk about that. We're going to have a special guest on, and that's going to be Colonel Melvin Russell, formerly of the Baltimore Police Department, retired. He's with the police department for, I believe, over 40 years. And we're going to get some insight on that situation with him. But I want to go over what has happened. There's been a change. Acting Commissioner Richard Worley, his nomination has been postponed. And it's curious that that was done. The Outsiders did put out a 7-minute and 40-second video, and I believe within an hour of after that video went out, just a little after 11 a.m., about 12:06 p.m., so a little over an hour later, or a little less than an hour later, WMAR makes an announcement, puts it on their site, that the nomination of Richard Worley is postponed indefinitely. So we'll just take a listen as to how that happened.
Well, the hearing for the official nomination of interim police commissioner Richard Worley to become the next top cop in the city has now been postponed now. So, as you know, it had been scheduled for August 15th, but has been postponed to an undetermined date to allow for community engagement meetings so the public can voice their opinion. Mayor Scott A. Worley.
Wait a minute. So they postponed the nomination so that he could do, a speaking tour around Baltimore City? Now, first of all, what should have happened is Brandon should have gotten input from the community organizations, from different communities, from advocates, etc., from the people, in other words. He doesn't care what the people think. BG&E handed over the conduit, control of the conduit, to BG&E of Baltimore City's conduit, when the people said, we do not, overwhelmingly, we don't want this. So he has shown over and over and over again that he does not care about what the people of Baltimore want. It's whatever his agenda is that's important. Seems as though right now his agenda is GVRS, Group Violence Reduction, Stinkfest, because that's what I think it is. And that's his priority, not the people of Baltimore City, so don't get fooled.
The interim commissioner last month, Dr. Michael Harrison, surprisingly announced his resignation.
Okay, being announced as an interim or acting police commissioner, was not living in the city of Baltimore. Per the charter, the deputy police commissioner, which was his appointment several years ago, you were supposed to live in the city as a deputy police commissioner. So how can you trust him when he's breaking rules as a deputy police commissioner right out the gate? So I don't have very much confidence, zero confidence, negative zero, in Richard Worley and what he can or can't do. Baltimore, and I'm going to say this, we're going to call Colonel Melvin Russell. He's a real police officer, even though he's retired. He's a real deal. We're going to be giving him a call in just a little bit. But I just wanted to go over some information, what's been going on, and just wanted to touch on some numbers and statistics before I get with Colonel Russell. Baltimore is a city of 563,000 people. Now, under the so-called leadership of Brandon, the population of Baltimore City has plummeted 20,000 people. Businesses are running for the hills, getting out of here. And not just COVID. It's what he did during COVID that pushed businesses out. So the businesses are running out, people are running out. Approximately 20,000 people have left Baltimore since he's been mayor. And the homicides, or 161 homicides, we've had so far this year. The per capita of the homicides. Now let's talk numbers. How things really work. 1 in 3,496 people, that's per capita, have been murdered in Baltimore City. Now, if you compare New York City, which has a population of 7,888,000 people, 237 homicides, and that's basically at the end of July, their per capita of the murder rate per capita is 1 in, so far this year, 1 in 33,282 people, compared to Baltimore and 1 in every 3,400 people, 3,500 people. So if you were to have the same homicide rate per capita, if you compared New York to Baltimore, Baltimore had the same per capita homicide rate, 1 in 33,282. Baltimore City would only have 17 homicides. 17. That's it. Baltimore's per capita homicide is horrific. Baltimore City is the second most violent city, criminally violent city in the country. Yet Slim Shady gets up and brags and touts and sticks just out, or at least attempts to, and brags about the city and how great we're doing, and the numbers are great, and the numbers are down, and how wonderful we're doing. But he is selling you down the river. This city is a mess, and it is not getting better. Sure, there may be some numbers ticking lower, but while some numbers are ticking lower, there are other numbers that are ticking higher. That's why we remain the second most violent city in the country, number 17 in the world. So what I'm going to do is I want to specifically talk about what's going on with the cleanup. After a mass shooting, there is a cleanup the next morning. After a mass shooting, to open up the crime scene and have the cleanup done. Let's hear more about how that happened.
Sounds a little lazy, because of the size of the crime scene. They kind of seem to have said, well, it's too large, of an area. Well, that's the way it is, and so if you have to call out additional personnel, not a cleaning crew.
I have the utmost confidence in the detectives who are working this case. They and the folks at Homicide, those detectives, the actual professionals, determine what stuff should be moved and when it should.
Okay, so what Brandon is saying here is that the homicide detectives, because he's throwing them under the bus, they decide what things are moved and how, I guess, the location, the crime scene, how it's handled. But they do not close, or open I should say, a crime scene to have a cleaning crew come in to wipe a crime scene clean after a mass shooting the next morning. That's not going to be, I'm going to go out on a limb on this one, folks. That's not going to be a homicide detective's call. That's going to be the mayor's call. That's going to be the police commissioner's call to open up the crime scene to have that happen. Let's continue.
Need to move, so I have no concerns about that as well.
And he has no concerns about the fact that a police detective or detectives open up a crime scene that should have been kept closed and a full investigation done, and he's fine with it. Oh, that's fantastic. Another reason why this guy needs to get that giant boot up his hind parts and kick him out of office. Let's continue.
The commissioner has indicated that mistakes were made.
If we made mistakes, we will fix them and move.
Yeah, the first mistake that was made was making you acting commissioner without doing a search or looking at other folks to take that job. That was the first huge mistake.
Forward so it never happens again.
Today, 1 month after the city's largest mass shooting, there's no arrest and seemingly no rush.
When we make an arrest, it will be one that sticks, not one that just pleases you.
Okay, if we make an arrest, it'll be one that sticks and not one that just pleases you. Okay, whatever, Brandon, Slim Shady.
You may remember some 6 years ago, police kept a crime scene in Harlem Park open for 6 days while they searched for evidence of the death of Detective Sean Suter.
Now, that's Jeff Abel, Fox 45. Now, he's saying that this is one death that had happened with Baltimore City Detective Sean Suter. And 6 days, they had that crime scene closed for 6 days. This is one shooting, mind you, not 30 shootings and 2 deaths, homicides, 2 murders.
This crime scene in Brooklyn was reopened the same day.
The same day. That is horrific. Let me do this. I'm going to get him on the line. Hopefully he's waiting for me, but Colonel Melvin Russell, and he's the real deal. And we're going to talk to him and find out exactly how things really should have gone down. Okay, dialing the Colonel now. And then we'll find out how things are really supposed to happen at a crime scene.
Hey, Sean.
Hello, Colonel Melvin Russell. Hi, you're on the podcast now.
All right. God bless you. Thank you for reaching out for me.
Oh, God bless you as well. Well, what I wanted to do, and what I wanted to ask you, is that I'm getting feedback. Colonel, do you have me on speaker?
I'll say it again.
Do you have me on speaker?
Yeah, should I take that off?
Yes, it's getting feedback. Okay.
Oh, you had that type of feedback.
There we go, God. I'm here myself. Okay.
Okay.
No, I'm still getting it, but that's okay.
This area where I'm located doesn't have the best reception. Everyone will walk outdoors. So that's a little bit better, but you go ahead and keep talking. I can hear you fine. Great,
fantastic. First of all, I want to let my audience know and let the people know that Colonel Melvin Russell, 40-year veteran of the Baltimore Police Department. He was Director of Law Enforcement and Community Engagement. Was hired in 1979 And I didn't know this, Colonel Russell, that you were the first black valedictorian of the class.
Yeah, I was. That was a tough going, but I'm going to get to that right now. But just to let you know that we still got a long way to go, as it became apparent that I would be that African American class valedictorian, class segregated, and there was a lot of racism and hatred going on.
Yeah, I heard.
We prevailed.
I heard about that as well, and I want to get this in. Chief of the Community Collaboration Division. Now see, the Community Collaboration Division, that's where the police department and the community as a whole, different, I guess, community outlets, you were a huge part of that as the chief. How did that help the policing of the city and the relationship between the police and the residents of Baltimore City? How did that engagement improve things?
Well, first of all, that division didn't exist. As a matter of fact, the department had been void of it for several years prior to my being asked by the then mayor to take and build out that division and be in charge of it, because I have been very successful at doing community policing, meaning partnerships. I believe in leadership through partnerships between the police department and its community that it serves. And so that was so successful of a model that the then mayor said, hey, I need you to do that across the city. So she did one pulled the trigger and said, hey, you need to build this across the city. And the reason it's important is, listen, we can't build a viable community, a viable city that's safe, healthy, and everything that we desire, positive in the community, if it's just the police that are doing it. You have to have a listening ear, so the community is vital to hear, and not just to listen to them, but to also seek suggestions. Who better would know what works in their communities, in their neighborhoods, than those that live there 24/7, play there, work there, whatever the case may be. And so we would be, I'm just going to say, almost asinine if we would ignore the community and just build out these strategies and initiatives and put them in the communities, even the way we patrol, and we never even ask for input from the community or how they felt about it. So I just always believe including and partnering with the community.
I believe that is extremely important to do, because the folks in the community, they're the ones that live there. They're the ones who have to get out, go to their car in the morning, at night, get out of their vehicles or travel or whatever. And if it's a high crime situation, you want to feel as though you're safe. With the community engagement that has happened, that you have seen that's happened or that's been going on recently, the last few years, do you think that community engagement between the police department and the citizens has improved, or how do you feel about that?
Oh, no, it's gotten far worse. It's almost voided, except for some officers that understand it and embrace that and do it at their level. But as a whole, especially as a mission for the police department, and this is most police departments across the country to include Baltimore Police Department, they may say that, listen, we know this is the right thing to do, but behind the scenes, they really don't want to do it. They don't support it. My blessing is, Sean, that I grew up in an era of community policing, and all those who came in after that period, that would be doing zero tolerance, late 1990s to the 2000s, they never saw it. So you have officers who've never seen it, and then all of a sudden it becomes a big thing. We want community policing. A couple of years later, they don't know how to do that. They didn't see that. And so I was fortunate that I grew up in it, and I knew exactly what to do, and I never stopped doing it.
Well, with the policing that's going on, and I guess the lack of community connection, with the situation that happened July the 1st and 2nd, which is horrific, the biggest mass shooting of ever in the history of the city, do you believe that if there was better community interaction with the police and better training as far as the police officers dealing with situations like that which happened in regards to safe streets, talking to and 5 incidences and breaking them up, even though there was a very high probability, 85%, from Stephanie Mavronis, from what she said, 85% chance that they had actually seen the weapons. Do you think if their policing and with the community was improved, with the policing and the community interacting better, you think that would have been a really big, I guess, a really big factor in that event, horrific event, not happening?
Yeah, I don't like the Monday morning quarterback, but I emphatically believe this in my hearts of hearts. Especially knowing that after I left, the division that I ran, community policing, community collaboration, was basically just about letting me know that the leadership didn't really agree with that type of policing, and they could take those resources and do something else with it. However, if they were in place and they were continuing to build those relationships, I call building up relational equity across the city, it would. I'm just saying this. It would not have happened. It should not have happened. If you had police officers who were taught, who were trained, who were held accountable to building relationships, there was just so many misfires, so many things that should not have happened from everything that I've read. And of course, I've got a lot of calls about it. But it just shouldn't have happened. There was just too many things, glaring issues that BS said, wow. This shooting should have never happened.
Well, I had on the show Marcus Strider, Dan, I know you know him as well, and he was on the show, and I asked him, as the leader of the Guardian Angels in Baltimore City, what would happen in an interaction, say, with the Guardian Angels and those 5 incidences, and there would have been knives or guns or weapons that you would have seen on the individuals. What would have happened? And he adamantly said that they would have immediately called 911 if there were guns or knives or weapons that they saw the Guardian Angels on the scene. What do you think of that?
Well, I love Sean. I've been knowing him for decades, and I know that to be true. He would have absolutely done that, so I'm 100% in agreement with him. And from a police perspective, I would say that, number one, it should have never even got to that place. It should never got to the place where there's people gathering and gun being shown and so forth and so on. Listen, on the outside, I've had illegals. My understanding there was no permit to have that type of gathering.
No, it wasn't.
And okay, so then I've been being a commander in what a lot of people would refer to as the most challenging, let me put it that way, district in the city. I had a lot of illegal block parties that pop up, and my guys under my leadership were told, if you see those, we just don't walk past them, right? You challenge those.
Well, I'll say this much, with Colonel Melvin Russell, that
just making sure everything's okay. And oftentimes me as a commander, because I care about my citizens and my community, I'm there. So I'm always going to see this. So there wouldn't even have been an opportunity for any raise to that escalation where we have anything to de-escalate. It just wouldn't have happened.
Well, I'll say this, okay. I know that you turned the worst midnight patrol shift, okay, into the best. You took the worst and made it the best and did it in 3 months. Could you just quickly tell us, how did you take the worst and turn it into the best in such a short period of time?
Yeah, so let me say this. So I had just come back out of doing narcotic work for about 20 years. And so I like to say that I came out of a Rick Van Winkle stage, because in the 80s I was still in patrol, right? And there was great community partnerships and relationships across the board. The kids still loved us, they looked up to us, yada, yada, yada. And then I disappeared in narcotics. I wasn't worried about any facets of policing other than cleaning up neighborhoods from illegal trafficking and poisoning of our community members. And so when I reemerged back in patrol some 20 years later, and I had this midnight shift, I realized almost immediately that, the climate and the culture had changed on both sides of the fence. The community didn't appreciate us, and oftentimes, especially in these neighborhoods that were underserved and oftentimes were police, they didn't like us. You know, you had young people who were now yelling at the top of their lungs when they saw us in uniform. I'll never forget it, saying, I hate the explicit language police, and I was shocked. And so I began to examine my officers, and I said, wait a minute. And I saw how they were patrolling and even talking to the community. You didn't want their PA systems are driving around and saying, get off these corners, you little ninjas, but you said your word. And I was shocked. And so I beat the crap verbally, but in love. My officer said, you are not policing correctly. And then I went back in the streets and I showed them how to police correctly. And so before you know it, they love my policing style, which would have every hand of community policing, and it made their job easier. because now the community began to adore them and love them, which made their job easier. Now they got information to solve crime because the community became more trusted to them or trustworthy of them. And so that's all it was. It was me leading by example, telling them, this is how the way you police. I know you guys are young. You come from this old school age, but the old schools work. Some right away, some it took months, 3 years, but he eventually bought into it, and that's how we drove our crime down a slower, at least 40-year crime low, because the police realized, man, when we build relationships, our job is so much easier, and the crime goes away.
Well, that sounds exactly how the way things should be done, because it's efficient, and it's really, it's extremely important to have dialogue, to have interaction with the community, all parts of the community, whether they're the young folks, the seniors, the folks who may be more affluent, the folks who may not have as much as others. There's that dynamic that you bring when you have that type of relationship with the citizens of the city. And I want to get to something that has just recently happened. Now, Richard Worley, who was the deputy police commissioner, in the charter, it does state that the deputy police commissioner has to be a resident of Baltimore City. Now he's saying, well, as being appointed, the acting police commissioner by Brandon, Slim Shady, that's what I call him, Slim Shady, that he now, I guess he's seen the lights. I'm going to move in the city now, and I can't wait to get back with the folks of Baltimore City. I love them so much. Yeah, he moved out to Anne Arundel County several years ago, and this is me. I'm a straight shooter. If a guy or a lady or a young lady, whoever, if you are getting put into a position as deputy police commissioner, and in that charter, which you know it says that, they know that the deputy police commissioner should be a city resident, and you take that gig and you don't move into the city and you take that gig, then you turn around after you've been appointed or nominated, or appointed as the acting commissioner to be nominated for the police commissioner job. I don't trust you. I don't trust your character. This is just me. My dad was an Army Ranger. He was military Army Ranger. My grandfather was a pastor of a church. He had a radio ministry. He had a ministry, an outreach ministry for the lost and so on. Okay, so I come from that kind of stock. And to be in that position, to do something like that dishonest, when you are in that position as a deputy police commissioner, I don't trust you. And I said on my show, I wouldn't trust you any further than I could throw you. Now that's me. But getting back to the situation at hand, when it comes to the crime scene. The crime scene of 28 shot, 2 murdered was open. The crime scene was open the morning after. Now, when it comes to procedures at a crime scene, how would that work? Because I know that's not what you do. You don't open up a crime scene after you've closed it and do the investigation to get your evidence, whatever you need. You've got fingerprints, you've got DNA. Oh my goodness! Of course, the casings. They showed that on TV. The casings. You don't open that crime scene up to have a crew to come in and clean it and wipe it. Well, how would that normally work?
Yeah, so honestly, when I retired, I was an acting deputy commissioner as well as I was carrying 2 titles,
okay.
2 divisions. And that and the chief colonel of everything community. So I've been on enough crime scenes that I'm familiar with this. And what I would say to you is that you don't shut down crime scenes until you are absolutely, emphatically sure that you've gathered, discovered all the evidence that you're possibly discovered. Being a former commander in one of the worst districts, I probably held the previous record of 13 people being shot. Nobody was killed, but 13 people being shot. And I will tell you on that scene, and even though it was just a backyard, in an alley, we kept that blocked off for days and days and days until those shooting detectives could they found everything. You know, we didn't clean it up. So I know you never shut down a crime scene. I don't care what you have to do. Usually you pull some cars out there to make sure nobody's coming through in the middle of the night trying to sweep it, clean it, remove evidence. You keep somebody detailed out there, and that crime scene stays open until the district, not the district, but the homicide leader, which is a major, and those detectives have said to him and conveyed, we are finished with the crime scene. And they will probably question him, did you do X, Y, and Z? Yes, sir, we did this. Okay, then we can shut it down. And then each one probably notify eventually through the chain the commissioner. And then the commissioner will probably get the final post to say, yeah, you can go ahead and shut it down, clean it up.
Okay, so if that process was followed, a correct procedure, then it would ultimately get to the acting police commissioner at this point, who is Richard Worley, where he would give the okay command, etc., to shut the crime scene down or open it up, to have a cleaning crew to go in to sweep the whole area clean. That would be ultimately be his decision. Yes, I'm here. That would ultimately be the police commissioner's decision to shut it down after a mass shooting.
Unless policies change, you know, I left in the beginning of the administration with Commissioner Michael Harrison, and I know he did a lot of administrative changes. And unless he made a policy change in that realm, especially being the largest mass shooting that Baltimore City has ever experienced that I can ever remember, then yes, something that important. The commissioner's going to be dialed in on that, and I'm sure he's going to give his nay or his yay whether or not they need to clean that up. That's my opinion. Unless some policy changes have been made, I don't know why they would, especially for something so vitally important that's getting national attention. I don't know why I would.
Well, I sent an email out to Felicia Porter, the councilwoman for the 10th District, and asking her if or when she was made aware that the crime scene was going to be swept clean. It hasn't been long enough for her to return an answer because it hasn't been a full day. But I am going to give Felicia Porter a call to find out what did she know. She's the councilwoman for that district. And to have a mass shooting that went national, this was national news, this was all over, this was CNN, Fox, MSNBC, all over the country of this mass shooting, the Brooklyn Day Massacre is what I call it. And I even put in there, not only did people get shot, in getting shot, you had people who were mutilated. One young man lost a testicle. This is, this is a serious situation. And yes, sir.
I just remember that out of 30 people, no one was over the age of 23, and the vast majority, I believe, between maybe 18 and under. And so that was, that broke my heart. Again, I just got cold after cold to reference to it, and that's how I learned about it on the national news.
Yes, it was national news, and I believe that's how I learned about it. I think I was watching. It wasn't CNN. It might have been the Fox National. Sometimes I look at CNN. See, this is the thing. We just, segue back into what we're talking about. But when I look at and listen to the news, I do it on a wide spectrum. The problem I have with people is they have this little narrow spectrum of news, and they miss a lot of news that's going on because they're in a little hut. But I do have a wide spectrum of news that I listen to, and that is how I found out. And with this mass shooting and how it was handled, there's been a postponement. I believe that the postponement was due to the fact that people have found out that the crime scene, people who didn't know about it, very prominent people who I've spoken with, had no idea that the next morning the crime scene was wiped. So they had no idea. So with that happening, I believe that Brandon is, he's having a press conference about Artscape or something. I think that's just I used to do this. You know, I was in politics, campaign advisor, I did advising. This is what you do. You go to Artscape, talk about that, but the elephant in the room is that your police commissioner, I believe fully, your police commissioner, acting police commissioner, wiped the crime scene down the next morning in a mass shooting, and it's getting out. And so he's going to be talking about Artscape, and he's going to try to, because he's Slim Shady. I believe, again, I believe that Brandon knew full well that they were going to wipe that crime scene down, and I believe he was okay with it because they wiped it down. Commissioner Worley and Brandon are pushing the GVRS, Group Violent Reduction Stinkfest is what I call it. How effective, oh boy, with this GVRS program, do you think it's a good idea? Do you think it's working? I mean, I know I'm throwing you a bit of a curve. But how do you feel about that? I mean, you know what works for you, and what worked for you, and it was effective.
Well, safe streets, that's what, long time. When I was a district commander from 2008 to 2014 in the Eastern District, they were there. They had the east side, safe streets, their office was right in the district, only mine in the street. And I did not like the lack of relationship that they had with us as police, nor us with them. And so I went to a particular office. I knew some of the guys that were employed and were, quite frankly, I had arrested some of them when they were much younger, and we had great relationships. They turned their lives around. But at the same time, the street workers, we arrested a few of them, still selling drugs while they were being street workers. So the accountability there, I had long sit down with them in each.
Okay, Colonel Russell, I think we're in the back.
Partnership through leadership.
Okay.
And if we don't have that, I'm going to be pushing back. And so you need to understand that with the east side, if nothing else, we had an understanding to say, if my guy found out there was something brewing in the community, I was willing enough to pass it on to you so you can de-escalate it.
Okay.
And in turn, this has to be a two-way street. If you know something is brewing, I expect you. You don't have to snitch on anybody, but I expect you to tell me, hey, on this particular day at such and such an hour, something's going to jump off. So I can have my guys in a position to stop it before it even starts. And so we had an understanding, and so it was a good relationship. Police and these street workers, man, they don't talk. You know, they talk about their credibility from seeing talking to the police, and all that's hogwash. So if that's actually the relationship they have.
Hello, Colonel Russell. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, that relationship the Safe Streets have as with the police is as far and the community, because I was at the hearing July 13th, and I'm saying to myself, what are the Safe Street workers? What is this, MI5 or MI6? What are they, secret agents? What are they get information and they keep it like they have their own department, and then they withholding information from the police? That's the reason, I believe, say it straight up, it's the reason why you had the shooting. Because instead of Safe Street doing what was proper and the correct thing to do, because he wants to tout this GVRS program, those people were nothing but a sacrifice for this GVRS program. I firmly believe it, and I feel strongly about it.
I can't disagree with you on that.
So, you know what, Colonel Russell, I definitely want to have you back, and the outsiders are gonna keep on this, because what you've done in the community and your connections with the community, I believe that in Brandon's pick for the police commissioner, he should have gone out to the community to ask them to at least have some type of input in who should be the police commissioner. I firmly believe, especially after the debacle and disaster, and then this horrific event where you have a police scene, a crime scene where the police are there in a mass shooting that went national, to have the acting police commissioner, I believe, okayed it to be wiped the next morning, precludes him from being the commissioner. It should be shut down. As far as the Baltimore City Council, the gelding Baltimore City Council, if they're going to do anything, it's time to do it now and to shut down this nomination of Richard Worley. He should not be the police commissioner of Baltimore City, and I believe that the city is going to be in much more danger if he is made the police commissioner of this great city, the city I was born and raised in.
Can I share something with you?
Sure.
As we leave.
Okay.
So Rich Worley and everything he said, and I'm in full transparency, I call Rich a friend. We've worked together. I love him to life. He is a really good guy. But if what you're saying is true, right? If it proves and pans out that he shut this down before a real good canvassing was done and collection and gathering of evidence was done, if that is true, then I have to agree with you. If it is true, even what you said earlier about deputy commissioners living in the city. Now, again, in full transparency, I will tell you that the time I left, that was only the obligation or the mandate by the commissioner and nobody else in the agency. However, Harrison made a lot of policy changes. And so if he made a policy change that says, I want my deputy to live in Baltimore City, and if that is true, and that happened on his watch, and Rich is a part of that, and he ignored it or didn't adhere to it, then again, I say to you, then that raises a question too, and I tend to believe what you're saying. So again, as much as I love my friend, if these things, and even the shooting happening, and if it could have been prevented, and I'm on the outside now looking in, but I think in my heart of hearts, it should have never happened. If all these things happen, even my good friend, I think he's a great cop, I think he'll make an okay commissioner, but I will tell you this right now, that Baltimore is past the point of needing an okay manager type commissioner. They need an exemplary commissioner that can take them to the next level, that can take them into partnerships, into making the city safe, into building trust, and all those things we need to have a healthy city and get off of these stinking lists that always has us as one of the most dangerous cities, the most violent cities, unhealthy city. I think a great police commissioner can help us get off that list. And as much as I love Rich, I think he's an excellent soldier, and would be an okay commissioner, but I think we need way more than an okay commissioner. I think we need an outstanding commissioner. That's all I said about that.
I believe that's true. I believe the city needs someone who can get the job done, who's done it before, who's outstanding in what they do, someone of high character. I believe that as well. And in full disclosure as well, I have friends who either went to school, Cardinal Gibbons, with Richard Worley, graduated a year before or the same class. And I also have a friend who graduated the academy, the police academy, with Richard. So I know people who know Richard very well. And they told me, it's just like you said. They said, no, Richard's a good guy. You know, the academy, I didn't have any problems with him. And these are brothers, these are black guys. And they told me this. And I said, okay, great. Well, let's see what happens. And then this shooting, this mass shooting happened, and then the cleanup the next morning of the crime scene. And I told them, I said, look, I know, people are saying this guy's a good guy. Hey, he's a good guy. Well, he's not the man, the person for this job. You need somebody who's going to get in there and they've got their stuff tight. They know what they're doing. I say it doesn't, but what has happened with this debacle, and then the nail in the coffin is to have that site wiped clean. I cannot go with, and I cannot push, and I cannot say that I'm going to support quite the opposite, Richard Worley, to be the police commissioner of Baltimore City. So I just want to give full disclosure as well.
And Sean, I can't argue with you. We all have our opinions. And quite frankly, I'm kind of disturbed by it myself, especially as it came out that the police were notified. There was at least 3 calls that really raised an alarm to say, why didn't someone get dispatched to that scene, man? Why didn't somebody go with people calling with knives, guns, fighting? And I never heard one person was telling me that Volkswagen flew over here and said there's a large gathering, and still nobody showed up, and these were hours before. So I've been scratching my head. How was this allowed to continue to escalate when it could have been nipped in the bud? Listen, I don't know, especially knowing that this has been an illegal gathering for years,
Exactly.
for 20 plus years. I mean, so that lets me know it's been happening on not just this commission, but the previous commission. Just didn't blow up in his face. But how do we let an illegal block party? It would have never happened on my watch. And a lot of other commanders that I know, it would have never happened on their watch if they weren't charged. This happened. I mean, so I got a lot of head scratching. And like you, I will stand by the verses that we got. But I do have a lot of questions too, Sean. I'm questioning too. I'm like, I can't believe this, man. So I understand what you're saying, bro. I'm with you.
Well, thanks for being on Colonel Melvin Russell, The Outsiders. We are just interviewed anybody coming in. We're just listening. It is a podcast, so you can just fast forward or go back. But Colonel Melvin Russell, thanks for being on The Outsiders, the special edition, Baltimore edition. And we really appreciate Doc Cheatham, my co-host, Superstar Doc Cheatham, was supposed to be here, but he had another project he was taking care of, but he will be on Thursday. But thanks, I greatly appreciate it for being on with us, Colonel Russell.
Listen, thank you. Doc's a great friend, known him for eons, also a great community leader, former NAACP president, love him to life. And listen, Sean, thank you for being a great voice out there when a lot of people are too afraid to stand up and speak. Thank you for speaking real truth to power. So I appreciate you a lot too, bro.
Okay, thanks a lot. Take care.
All right, God bless you.
Bye-bye. And that was Colonel Melvin Russell, retired in the Baltimore Police Department, 40-year veteran. I believe that his name should have been in that pot. There are a few others out there that other people are talking about, but I believe definitely with his history and with his work ethic and with his connections with the community. He was the chief of the Community Collaboration Division. I believe that he would be a top-notch. And I didn't know he was the first black valedictorian of the police academy, graduating class. Okay, quite impressive. So I want to touch on one other thing, and I just want to get this out on this podcast. I heard something earlier today which was disturbing. I heard a couple of radio pundits, I'm not going to say who they are, but I am going to go over what they were talking about, and that has to do with BGE and the people who are bringing a lawsuit against BGE. Ravina Raja is representing them. He's a friend of mine. And the people, there are more and more people, I believe it's several hundred, 200-300 now, around the city for this, putting these, I guess these valves and piping, if you will, and outside of the house. And BGE is a sponsor of a certain radio, TV call letter, and these pundits, personalities, because BGE is a sponsor, their opinions are biased, so you can't really take them seriously. The Outsiders, we're not beholden to any one organization. So my opinion, and even if I was, I'm going to say what my opinion is. They could go pound sand. They don't like it, bye. But BG&E does not have jurisdiction over questions about safety, because that was what they were talking about, safety. And the external piping, basically, it's external piping that's put on the houses, and they were basically, talking about, if you're looking up information and you want to analyze and really study what goes on with these findings and so on that would make you a geek. That's ridiculous. So you're going to belittle people because they want to know the truth or they want to seek more information. So you're going to do name calling, Fredo, because they're trying to find out, hey, what's going on with this BG&E situation and this lawsuit. The Pipeline and Hazardous Materials Safety Administration. That's a federal agency. They are the ones who oversee the safety of these piping and valves, not BG&E. BG&E has no authority over the safety or safety issues, or have no jurisdiction over safety issues. It's the Pipeline and Hazardous Materials Safety Administration. You can Google them, look them up. And like I said, they're a federal agency. And what this federal agency said, that has the oversight and the authority and jurisdiction, that the majority, the vast majority of injuries are from external gas regulators. The piping they want to put outside the house, the gas regulator, they're pipes, the gas regulators. The majority, vast majority of injuries, Fredo, are from external gas regulators. It's about 80% of the injuries come from the external gas regulators, the piping outside the house. So before you start popping off, talking about how wonderful BGE is and how they have the authority or something to that effect, BG&E and the people with the lawsuit, I'm going to side with BGE. Dumbbell. Get your facts straight first. Be a geek. Put your little hat on, the thinking cap on. Do some investigating. And my advice to you, Fredo, before you start popping off at the mouth, belittling people who want to get more information and know what's really going on so they can be informed. That's why the people who are being informed are those who listen to the outsiders. Because we call it like it is, myself, my co-host Doc Cheatham, and my guests. Just like Colonel Melvin Russell, one of my guests, Strider, Guardian Angels, and I have some other guests coming up as well. Judge Wanda Hurd, former Chief Judge, the Baltimore City Circuit Court, and others. Dwight Pettit, I've had him on. Pastor Alvin Gwynn. So, and more. State Senator Barbara Robinson. I bring on guests who are straight shooters as well. Those who have been invited on the show, and you know who you are, have not come on because they haven't come on is because they know I'll see right through them if they talk a lot of BS to me and they try to be slick. I'll see right through it. It's not going to work. So maybe that's the reason why they haven't taken the invitation. But those who have, kudos to you. I thank you for coming on and being on the Outsiders. And this has been another episode of the Outsiders podcast. I'm your host, Sean Sims. Thursday will be our next podcast, and we have a very special guest who's going to give us some really in-depth information regarding crime scene investigation. We have an expert, and I mean someone who knows crime scene investigating better than anyone else. We have a top guy in the country, and he'll be on The Outsiders, Thursday edition, Baltimore edition of The Outsiders. Anyway, thanks for listening. Thanks for listening to the show. Let others know that you have somewhere you can go. iHeartRadio, We're on Spotify, YouTube as well, the Outsiders Podcast, that you have somewhere you can listen to and you can get the inside information from the outsiders. Anyway, take care all, and God bless. Take care.